start wrapping up here. I won't cover all the slides, and you will be sent the slides, and I will hand over to Terry. So go ahead, Terry.
And Ulya, we will also be launching the second poll at this point. I just wanted to share with you the results from the first poll, which was about how often do you think about your career plan. 21% said weekly, 43% said monthly, 29% said couple of times a year, and 7% said yearly. So you have those numbers.
This is a great group. Congratulations again. My God, I'm impressed.
So I will be launching your second poll as well, so that we can get that. And
while you're doing that, Terry can cover the question.
Okay, great. So we'll start with a question. This person asked, how do we find a mentor and set two-way expectations with a mentor?
So mentors have to be people that you feel you can learn from and people that you respect and you look up to. And a mentor is it's a personal thing. So without knowing your situation in life and where do you work and what kind of area, etc., you really need to think about who might be your role models in either where you are or where you want to be. And then, that's really where the kind of people that you go after. The other thing that I would actually thinking about mentors, there's a brilliant chapter in Lean In, the Sheryl Sandberg book, and the chapter is appropriately titled, Will You Be My Mentor? Please do read that chapter. And then, because what happens is you don't necessarily go and approach people cold, saying, hey, will you be my mentor? So that's why the chapter will make a good read for you. And once you've done that, and somebody does agree to be your mentor, then you have like an operating agreement with them. And, what will you do in the relationship and what will they do and what are they committing and willing to do? Because a lot of the times it's about finding the time. You have to find the time and your mentor has to find the time on a regular basis. But also, it's important for the mentors to be open to unsolicited ad hoc calls from you, because sometimes you need to get hold of your mentor. Something has happened and you need to be able to call them. So I don't know if I answered the question, but do read the Lean In, Will You Be My Mentor chapter.
Okay, great. So we have another question. The person wants to know and wants you to think about the most challenging point in your career leadership, and how were you able to overcome the hurdle using your network of power brokers, mentors, or others?
Sure. So I wouldn't say, well, I wasn't going to use the term challenging, but maybe so. After working for Thomson Reuters, having a great career, 20 plus years, I decided that I wanted to become an entrepreneur and I wanted to experience the other side of life. So in 2010, I, made a deliberate decision to leave Thomson Reuters, in spite of my mentors telling me not to do so and my bosses warning me against it. I knew the time was right and I did it. But then it's like, when you're working for a large company, you have all these structures and support systems, and then suddenly you step out and it's the wild, wild west, and it's a new reality and a new norm. So as much as I wanted to get out of that, structure, it was a bit challenging to try and put my own structures together and the network. So I was developing a side business in Pakistan called Concierge Pakistan. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that I'm able to fund the business. And I started looking for consulting assignments. And that is where my network is stepped in big time. I never had to, I never really had to go looking, because all I did was send an email to people in my network many of them were my ex-colleagues, because what happened with Thomson Reuters, they had a high turnover of executives after Thomson acquired Reuters. And many of the senior people landed even bigger and better jobs elsewhere. And one thing that I had done really well was stayed in touch with those people, no matter where they were. So when I needed a consulting assignment or two, I emailed my network, and before I knew it, I had offers of consulting, I had job offers, I was blown away by how my network really stepped in to try and help me. I declined the job offers, and I ended up taking 3 of those consulting assignments back to back.
Okay. Well, this question addresses almost the opposite of that. What they're asking is, what are suggested ways to build a network outside of immediate team leaders? And how can that help build my personal brand?
Yeah, so, that's an excellent question. And the way I have done it is, through professional organizations. So, for example, when I was at Thomson Reuters, it's very easy to just think of your network inside of your workplace. And that's, when I talk about deliberate networking, it is to try and have a wider network. So I joined organizations like Elevate, and there were many, many women's networks for the financial services that I joined and managed to have some awesome relationships with women, especially who were outside. Then I also joined a network, Chief Operating Officer network, through which I met both men and women, and that was also deliberate networking on my part. And now coming into sort of, Tivity Health, and before that, Aptus Health, because in 2013, I actually, thanks to my network, I was able to switch verticals. So from financial services, I was able to move into healthcare through my network. But in healthcare, then I started building a new network through organizations that are in healthcare. So women business leaders in healthcare. And then attending conferences, meeting people, in other companies that might be today your partners or vendors, and making sure you are connecting with people outside of those meetings, whether it's over lunch or coffee or just a phone call. Once you get the hang of it, it's easier than you think.
Okay, great. Next question is, what framework is available to analyze the gap between my aspirations, strengths, and weaknesses?
So check out the Word document that accompanies this session. So there's a Word document which really is takes you step by step through this process. But in addition to the Word document, there are 2 other PDFs that are attached. One is called 7 Stories, and please read that. And that 7 Stories is also a very good way to develop a deeper understanding of what you enjoy, your strengths, and your core competencies. But you have to be disciplined when you do the 7 Stories exercise. The other document is around a 40-year vision. And don't be put off by a 40-year vision, especially if you are, further advanced in your career, because whatever you read in the 40-year vision, it can be 10 years, 20 years. You choose your number. Just don't make it but it's supposed to be long-range planning. But don't make it less than 10 would be my advice to you. But through the 40-year vision, 7 Stories, and the Word document, that is, I think it's a good amount of stuff that you need to start analyzing and creating the gap analysis, and then what you need to do to fill the gap.
Okay. Well, it looks as though that's the end of the questions, unless anyone else has any other questions. I will.
Actually, Ulya, there are a few other questions in the Q&A sections as well. So is it possible, so the first question is it possible to get a few professional development plans as examples? Of course, you can anonymize them. Is it possible to get a few samples?
Yes, it is possible to get a few samples. I will anonymize them because, again, I'm going to try and get one from a lady called Jessica at Tivity Health. She followed this process, and within 3 months, she wrote to me and she said, "Guess what? I have landed my dream job, thankfully internally, because it does work. So I'm going to try and ask for a more recent one." The other thing that I forgot to mention is that it's okay for your development plan to have optionality built into it. So, for example, my own development plan has three parts right now. One is be the CEO of a company with 100 million or more in revenues. The second part is chief operating officer for a company with 2 billion or more in revenues. And the third part is actually to acquire 3 or 4 small companies and bring them together in a way where the whole is going to be bigger than the sum of its parts. So it's okay to build optionality. And another important point that I want this audience to be very aware of is the importance of recruiters. When recruiters contact you, in particular retained search firm recruiters, please do not ignore them, because they have elephant memories and one day you might need them. So always try to be polite and respond to them and try and help them, because that is what I have always done. I always try, if I'm not interested in a job that somebody's approached me about, I try and give them references and I always respond to them in a very nice, polite manner. So, okay, my action is to send a couple of sample plans.
All right. The last two questions are, how do you work on your communication skills, especially if you're coming from South Asian background? A lot of times have difficulty in effective communications. Please advise.
Yeah, so there's a lot of training in communications. It is important to understand the type of communication that because the way you communicate if you're trying to do a consultative selling versus the way you communicate if you're trying to explain a product functionality to somebody. It's different types of communication, but the gist of a lot of the communication courses is that you need to keep it short, you need to keep it punchy. I think the tendency, especially from the South Asian lot, is that it takes us a long time to come to the punchline. And we not only, I won't say we embellish stuff, but we make very long sentences. And especially in America, people are short on time and they're short on patience. So you really do need to keep your messages very short and punchy. And look at in fact, LinkedIn has some very good communication courses available. And especially if you go into SlideShare and you do some searches, there's plenty of material available for free. And as I'm talking, I'm thinking of, can I recommend anything in particular? I can't think off the top of my head, but I have done many, I've reviewed many slides and I've done many communication courses myself.
All right. Next question. What is the best way to get on boards, and are there any prerequisites to do that?
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing that I didn't get a chance to come to. So the board, it's a more complicated than you might think. There are a couple of very good books out there about board seats and what it takes to get on boards. What I will say is, firstly, the board resume is very different to the kind of resume you put together when you're looking for a job. So get familiar with the type of resume you need to have if you are going for a board position. And in fact, the person who's asking this question, if you know their name, I might be able to send them a couple of sample board resumes. The other thing to remember is that, the kind of board that you are trying to get to, because there are advisory boards, there are, not-for-profit boards versus for-profit companies. There are companies that are PE held versus publicly traded companies, etc., or venture-backed companies. So, for example, a PE type company probably would need somebody on their board with hands-on operational experience who's good at coaching and mentoring executives, whereas a publicly traded company board would probably be looking for somebody who has great connections and contacts and, sort of understand the fiduciary responsibilities and governance angle of the board, etc. So it's a whole, it's a very loaded area. So what I would say is first, try and get, if you're not already on a board, try and get on a not-for-profit board. and then work your way from there. And for-profit boards decide whether it's a VC-backed company, private equity held company, or a publicly traded board.
All right, thank you.